Test 1, 2, 3. Good afternoon, colleagues. We are welcoming you to our second Staff Information Forum. We are represented by Dawn Mason, Deirdre Rubenstone, Kevin Scanlon, Gary Dabrowski, who will step back in, Jeff Carlson, and members of our TVTA leadership, Amy Cusimano, Eric Gustafson, Leanne Perry, and Dawn Alexander. So welcome. This evening and Andy White. We are going to focus today on instructional questions. As we know, last time we did not have a chance to get to those. Today's meeting will last 2 hours. We will end at 3 o'clock, and we will get through, hopefully, almost all of the questions that you posed. So we have a list of questions, and we're going to read those questions and provide the answers. So I'm going to start with Google Classroom. That was one of the first categories. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Deirdre.
Good afternoon, everyone. The first question that I have here is, how will I be able to assess kids through Google Meet, simultaneously assessing kids that are live? I believe this question, just to add some context to it, has been asked by a secondary teacher, and that it is regarding the testing environment. In order to administer a test on the secondary level to all students, no matter where they are, remote or in person, I would highly recommend using GoGuardian Teacher at that time, where you open up a session that all students, both in person and at school, are participating. Additionally, if possible, if this is a multiple choice question, I would simultaneously recommend using a locked Google form. Other teachers have reached out to me about different types of assessment. For example, I have some secondary teachers who are exploring doing oral exams using Flipgrid. So having the students recording themselves answering their questions and explaining their answers. I also have teachers who are eliminating some tests and adding authentic style assessments in instead in order to address concerns about academic integrity. I recognize that my answer may not be all-inclusive. It definitely does not touch every subject area, grade level, department. So if there is something specific that I have not addressed that you have a concern and would like to troubleshoot, please reach out. The next question is addressed to both Kevin and I, and that is, could each course have a recorded daily lesson posted on a teacher's Google Classroom? This would help students who miss class in person as well as remote. It could be a recording of anyone who teaches the course. Students don't necessarily get their teacher, but they do get a lesson. I have been in contact with many teachers who are flipping their classroom this year. So they are recording their lessons and then assigning that recording for homework. I do think that this is a good example of how to use a recorded daily lesson in a way that still allows for daily real-time teacher-facilitated instruction during the 42 minutes that you have your in-person and remote students together. I'm going to defer to Kevin for the second half of that question.
So the expectation from the state of New York now is that we have that daily interactive capabilities, not a remote lesson any longer, not asynchronous. It must be synchronous. So all the teachers doing a lesson, and we're not going to dictate how a teacher sets up their lesson. The lesson should be synchronous in some capacity, but just as you would in a classroom where you're with your students, you're not going to be speaking for 40 minutes or 4 hours at the same time. You should have capabilities of breaking students into groups. You can do that. You do that in the classroom. You can also do it online. All of our systems have that capability. So there's not an expectation that any teacher should be recording any of the lessons. We certainly don't want you recording your current lesson that's going up. But if you have that already done, and again, if you're flipping the classroom and you're spending the time doing that piece in front of the class, you certainly can make those adjustments, but we're not going to dictate how you set that up. Sometimes with having those capabilities, you could have colleagues in the same department or same grade level sharing some of those things. That's perfectly fine. Anyone that feels that that's necessary, you absolutely have the ability to do that. But it's not an expectation that you have to do that.
Adding on to what Kevin has said, we know that collaboration is going to be crucial to our success. It is really difficult to build these types of lessons alone in a vacuum, and so we do hope that you are meeting with your grade level or department colleagues and crowdsourcing your best material. The next question, we do not stand at the board and teach as we have different equipment spaced around the room. Are we expected to keep moving the camera around with us? I do not know what your room setup is going to look like for this year. So many of the rooms were pared down and what's left behind are the student desks and a teacher desk or computer table that has the teacher station and a printer on it. That being said, I think teachers should be probably carrying their Chromebooks around with them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the camera would be on you. So the way that I would conduct a lesson in this format, I might open up my Chromebook and begin a Google Meet, and I could have a percentage of students who are at home joining via Google Meet, and then I also have a percentage of students who are in the classroom with me. I'll do my updates so that my students can see my face. It's Monday, you have a test on Thursday, please don't forget to hand these items in, etc. So the kids in school and the kids in person are seeing me. At that point, I'd probably move into my instructional material. So whether that is a Google Slides presentation or a Jamboard, a blank Google Jamboard or a blank Kami document that I'm just writing on top of. At this point, the camera would no longer be on me and I would be sharing my screen. So I'm holding my Chromebook in my arm, what's on my Chromebook is being projected onto my board and it's also being projected onto the screens of the kids who are at home. There is none of the unflattering camera angles holding your Chromebook so that you can see up your nose. Instead, students are going to be looking at the item that you are presenting to them, and in that method, they would be hearing your voice at the same time. Additionally, there are tools built in that allow you to make gestures, different kinds of cursors, different types of highlighting tools or spotlight tools. We hope to provide some instruction on those tools during the professional development conference days, but also consistently throughout the year as support is needed.
What if students at home do not have the same equipment and supplies as we are using in the classroom? Example, clay, wood, hammer, nails, laser printers. Will we be expected to modify our curriculum for them? If yes, this doubles the number of our preps. Well, it sounds as if this is a tech question, so Alan Baum, who oversees the tech teachers, will be able to help address some of this as well. But as far as supplies go, we're looking at having things like manipulatives, we're actually setting that up. So I don't want to get that was a statement made by some teachers about the what ifs and the possibles. So this is a definite. We have some manipulatives available for teachers to use. We'll probably be packaging those more as we go forward. Some of the time spent during the week prior for preparation, and even at the end of your day, will be needed to be done in that capacity. With regard to the tech teachers, we may have to modify their curriculum to do this. If that were to be the case, given the projects that were assigned, while we can't do everything in a demonstration lesson and some things have to be provided in person, we could, depending on what the items are, what the lesson is, provide that materials to the students, or we can modify the lesson as more of a demonstration lesson. So tech is very specific. We're not going to send wood home to students, to have them carve it up with their saws and everything, but we will have the capability of having some supplies provided. The next question is, when students log in, will they be expected to be on video as well as required to participate? The anticipation is that yes, you should have some type of ability to see the student throughout the lesson, not just their icon or a screen or some type of emoji that's designating them. You have to know it's them on there. You have to take their attendance, and you have to check in if you're doing projects or you're doing small groups, all of it throughout the lesson. If it's constantly the emoji or whatever their initials, how would you know it's them? So you need to have that ability to check and see it's them going through. Do they have to stay on video? Absolutely not. You can break off into groups, you can hear audio of the students speaking as well.
Okay, the next questions have to do with daily sign-in for staff. And the question is, will there be an alternative place to sign in and out other than the main office? This creates long periods of time in the hallway for teachers whose classrooms are on the other side of the building. We are discussing this with our building principals, and the principals will notify the teachers with regard to possible alternatives. We understand and are sensitive to this need. The next questions have to do with classroom setup, materials, disinfection, cleaning, and ventilation. May we teach a small group of students at a table if all the students and the teachers are wearing a mask? At this point, we have put in redundant measures, and what I mean by that is that we are asking our desks to be students to be 6 feet apart, student to student 6 feet apart, and to have a mask. So if a teacher were to pull students to a table, and since those tables have been removed from the classroom to allow for that physical distancing, that probably is not going to be possible. And we want to make sure that we maintain those redundant measures in place. What I would suggest then is that maybe grouping students in your classroom, if there are 4 or 5 students at the same level of reading ability, is to put them in a section in your classroom so that you could then go over as the teacher and work with that particular group. I know it's going to be some manipulation on the part of the teacher to set their classroom up that way, but I think that is probably the safest way for us to be able to proceed. And again, we will reevaluate these measures as we go along, and we're looking at all of the data and the transmission rates. All students need to be able to utilize visual aids as well as smartboards during instruction times. I'm concerned that the location of desks will make viewing inequitable for students. We have asked our building principals to work very carefully in setting up the desks so that students will have a clear visual view of all of these materials. We will adjust the desks based on teacher need as the students come in. Again, I want to point out that the class sizes will be somewhat smaller as a result of having some students opt for remote learning. So we are certain that we will be able to make sure that students will be able to visualize all of the materials within the classroom.
If I could just add on to Cheryl's answer, I would also like to add that any item that is being shown on the interactive technology can also be shown on a student's Chromebook. So if there's a student located somewhere, anywhere in the room, who's having trouble seeing, please allow that student to look at your visual aids on their device.
Thank you, Deirdre. Will students' work be allowed to be displayed on bulletin boards? We at this point would probably discourage doing that at this moment in time. I think that it would be best to limit the amount of paper exchange that we have. Am I allowed to collect paper from students in class? Am I allowed to hand out paper worksheets to the students who are in person? Many students do not like writing on Chromebook for practice sheets, which is why they will choose the in-person option. Are the in-person students required to do practice on the Chromebooks? I would say that at this point, again, we are trying to limit the amount of paper exchange. We will be supplying teachers with gloves if they want, disposable gloves, so that if they feel that there are students in their classroom who can learn best through paper, we certainly will, permit that to take place. But again, we are emphasizing the importance of using the Chromebooks as best we can. Obviously, we'll turn to teacher judgment about accommodations for particular students within the classroom.
Can I just add to that? We all should be anticipating we're going to a virtual model. So you should be preparing all students at all levels for use of the Chromebooks. Because there will be a time, most likely it will happen, that we're all going to be out. So the Chromebooks must be practiced with as we have students, both in class and outside of class.
Ventilation has been problematic at the high school. Under these circumstances, how has this been addressed? What about rooms with broken AC? Any unit ventilators that are not operating as they should be, motor needs to be replaced, whatever needs to be repaired will be repaired as quickly as possible.
During the staff forum on Monday, August 17th, Ms. Pudicic stated that social distancing of desks was measured from center to center of students. On August 5th, the New York State Department of Education Office of Facilities Planning stated the following: to achieve acceptable social distancing between classroom desks, chairs, and teaching consoles, establish a minimum of 6 foot separation between individuals. Measurements should be taken from the edge of the workstation to the edge of the adjacent workstation in the front to back direction. The measurement should be taken from the front of the workstation desk to the back of the chair directly in front of it. Why is the district not following the guidelines with measuring from edge of desk to edge of desk? I'm very glad that we have an opportunity to provide clarification on this. We did check with legal counsel, and I am going to read an excerpt from a memorandum that was issued from legal counsel with regard to this particular issue. I also want to point out that not every desk in every school district or in every classroom is the exact same size. So to make these kinds of recommendations doesn't seem very prudent. So here is the response. The New York State Department of Education interim guidance for in-person instruction is inconsistent with SED's recently issued FAQ. The DOH guidance provides that appropriate social distancing means 6 feet of space in all directions between individuals or use of appropriate physical barriers between individuals that do not adversely affect airflow, heating, cooling, or ventilation, or otherwise present a health or safety risk. No reference is made in the DOH guidance to measurements from workstations. Although the FAQ is inconsistent with DOH guidance, the school reopening guidance from SED specifically states that should any health and safety related guidance in this document conflict with guidance issued by the New York State Department of Health, the DOH guidance shall apply. Therefore, districts must provide for appropriate social distancing, which means 6 feet of space in all directions between individuals or use of appropriate physical barrier. In the absence of clarification from SED, we consider the above answer to the recent SED FAQ regarding measurements from workstations to be a recommendation related to measuring of the 6 feet separation and not a requirement. I also want to state that in the DOH guidance, it does say that it is 6 feet of separation between individuals or wearing of masks. In our district, we are doing both. And so we have those redundant measures in place.
In regard to partitions, will we have them all for all elementary classes by the first day of school? Will they be attached to desks, and if so, how? Will teachers be provided with one? Will each class have extra partitions in case of problems? We probably will not have them for the first day of school. By the time all of the guidance came out on different materials, other than just the polycarbonate, which would have been also hard for us to get, as I'm sure you can all imagine, the supply chain for all of these kind of items takes some time. And that's gone on since March. We've been buying a lot of items since then. We have a lot. In some cases, we just won't have them by the first day of school. The desktop partitions, we probably will not have them till the second or third week of school, but as soon as they come in, you will have them. Will they be attached to desks? I would say at the elementary schools, probably they should be, because otherwise they might be getting knocked off the desk periodically, a number of times throughout the day. They have, each one has 4 little feet that it attaches into, and those feet can be, they have sticky on the bottom that you can peel off and stick them onto the desk. And we will have we ordered extras of those feet too, knowing that some will get lost. Teachers, if somebody wants one, we can get one for them. If it's going to suit their teaching style, that would be fine. We ordered, and then the next part of it, will each class have extra partitions in case of problems? We did order extras. So we will have extras available, if somebody loses one, it breaks, or we just need more. And we can always order more. Next question, will there be extra hand washing stations made for wings of buildings that do not have classroom sinks and have to rely on sharing one-person bathrooms for many staff members? I don't know that the extra hand washing stations would be practical, the ones that we would be able to get, because we don't have, otherwise if the self-contained unit the water has to be changed a number of times throughout the day, it's only one person at a time anyway. And so we have the hand sanitizer throughout the building. The form revealed that no specific measures are being taken to transform teacher workspace to meet social distancing guidelines. If we can, was part of the response. Safe workspaces should be considered a district responsibility to staff, absolutely. And what we will do is, in certain, maybe department offices, it may be rearrange the desks so that, if two people happen to be in the office at the same period and their desks are next to each other, maybe it'd be better to move those to different sides of the office. The desktop partitions, those can go in there as well. We absolutely can do what is needed to be done in order to do that.
Are we going to be purchasing the Teachers College new virtual units of study that have mini lessons created specifically to address this new form of teaching? The answer is yes, we are going to purchase that. We actually started rolling the purchase of that out in July when it was first informed that these were coming. Some of them are not complete yet, so we're trying to make sure that everything is there. In addition to that, for all the elementary teachers, we're bringing back Lauren Colbeck to do some trainings over the 3 days of superintendent's conferences or professional development days. How will we control the 72-hour book sanitizing? Each day they browse the library. We're in a new norm now, so some of the procedures that normally would happen in the classroom need to be reconsidered. So browsing the library may not be possible any longer. We may have to show books to students of what they could potentially pick, as opposed to letting them go into the book room and select their own books. As far as 72 hours, that's a recommendation that we are getting from the libraries who are doing that. So we'll have to sequester those books somehow, some way in your room. Could be in baggies, individual baggies for the students. Could be putting them on the windowsill for the time being, but remember the entire room at the end of the day is being sanitized. So they need to be secured some other location for the time being. Will students be purchasing and utilizing school supplies from teacher supply lists, or will they be only able to use the Chromebooks during the day? Do students need to bring their own supplies to services, math lab, reading lab, speech? Examples, dry erase markers, dry erase boards, the pencils, pens, a notebook, and Chromebook. On each of the district school websites, we have created modified supply lists for all students that we went through each of the building administrations working in conjunction with the teachers. So the answer to the first question is, yes, their supply lists have been modified. Yes, they should be using more of the Chromebooks than trying to use some of the supplies. Do they need to bring some of their own supplies? Absolutely. They've always been asked to bring some of their own supplies. But as far as some of the things that were mentioned, if those are specifically needed for areas like speech, math AS, reading labs, if we don't have a sufficient supply of our own, we'll buy them. So if you need those, you should be in contact with your building administration to buy them, or my office, and we'll buy them. But please don't go out trying to buy these things on your own. The next area is under testing, grades, assigned work for students, course outlines, and assessments. So you'll excuse me, this is a long question, so it'll take a little while to read it through. What will academic grading expectations truly look like while we're focusing on health protocols and social emotional learning? In the spring, teachers were asked to not put due dates on their assignments since we didn't want to overwhelm the students who were getting assignments from their classroom teachers, as well as the service providers. Are the expectations different this year? How are we going to be holding our students more accountable than we did this past spring? Are we allowed to hold students accountable for deadlines, take-off points for assignments being turned in late? How do we effectively communicate to students that we are no longer operating on a pass-fail grading system? That communication needs to occur at each teacher's classroom, in each of the secondary classrooms, in each of the subject areas. Yes, the expectations are going to be that students will be held accountable. However, We must be understanding of the fact that we will have students at some point in time who will either get ill or the family will get ill. So as we have done in the past, this district is very accommodating with helping students who are in need. We will extend every courtesy possible to make sure that those students are supported. So it's not just we're gonna fail them or take out points without having conversations with the parents and the students to see what's truly going on. Those lines of communication must remain open, whether it's email, phone calls, those should still be occurring. We need to know what's going on before we make this as a fait accompli. If you don't do it by this time, you're done. That can't be. There has to be exploration of that. It was never the case in the past, and it shouldn't be the expectation going forward. Will we be having midterms this year? Currently, we were supposed to put the grade breakdown for the year on our course outlines. Do we leave it off for now, as we are unsure about midterms and regions? Right now, if we are in this position where we are going to lose days due to going out with any type of COVID emergency, midterms will probably be canceled. So, but we will explore that as we move forward. Regions exams currently are on track. We received the deadline, the dates for those from the State Education Department. So unless something drastic happens, we'll receive that communication from the state. Right now, what I would tell you is if you're doing a syllabus and you're having this on there, you might want to tell the students, this is the way it is. Right now, we may have to make an adjustment at some point in the year, unfortunately, as we did last year. Cheryl, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
How universal screening will be handled this year? Typically, we spend the first few weeks of school administering the AIMSweb iReady testing to determine which students are in need of reading lab and math lab services. Will we still be doing this? Yes, we will still be doing this in a modified manner. I'm meeting with the math AS teachers this week to go over how that process will work. Natalie Littlebaugh has been having conversations with some of our reading leads. I will be happy to meet with them as well, and we'll discuss how this is going forward. I think we need to also extend the time frames that we had put into place last spring to get this accomplished. It will take us much longer to have this done than it did in the past. So it's not a race. It's that it gets done. We'll try to get it done as quickly as we can, given the circumstances we are under. Are teachers required to give the same exact quarterly unit exams and file assessments to remote students and in-person students in the same period? How will students from home be graded? So again, the idea of modifications to some of the assessments, as Deidre brought up when she spoke, may need to occur. So rather than just giving out part of our test as multiple choice portions, we may do more formative assessments. So modifications may need to occur as we move forward. Will proctor students, who will proctor students that are remote and receive exam time, extra time for exams? This is Deidre, I'm sorry.
Kevin likes stealing my thunder.
Running on the way.
We expect that any student who receives extra time for exams will be given so during their Go Guardian session. If you are a special educator, you may remember last year having a meeting with Jim Geist where we took a look at setting up how extra time for students was handled in Go Guardian, and if you need a refresher, we are more than happy to provide that for you.
It was mentioned at the August 17th forum that elementary initial assessments will be done on the Chromebooks, but there are oral probes to be administered to primary students. How will these be administered? Will teachers test their own students? Will reading teachers visit classrooms? Can we assess over a Google Meet? How can this be done so we are not exposed to an exponentially higher amount of students than the average teacher? This is a complicated answer to this one, so the idea of how we administer them will have to be done. If you need to do a oral probe with a student, you may have to pull that student on a one-to-one at a different point in time. We're not expecting the reading teachers to go into the classrooms. We will be having teachers using Google Meets. Yes, that is possible. We're trying not to expose cross-contamination from too many classrooms, but inevitably, in order to do our jobs and in order to educate the students properly, there will be times when students will be moving back and forth from rooms.
I'm really struggling with this. Okay, it's working now. So the next question is a three-part question. So I'm gonna answer it individually from each of the questions. are we required to give a mask break during our class period? The word required is an interesting word. So I am not going to say you are required. However, if a student raises their hand and asks for a mask break or indicates that they may need one, it would be incumbent upon us to, as a teacher or an educator, to be able to give that child a mask break. As I mentioned at the last forum, I suggested that if students are in rows, what teachers may want to do, again, looking at it developmentally, because younger children may require more frequent mask breaks than those students at the secondary level. So if you had students in 4 rows, let's say at I'll start with the secondary level, you could at some point during one class period give students a mask break in rows 1 and 3 for a period of under 10 minutes, and then give the rows 2 and 4 a mask break for under 10 minutes. And I think that would be reasonable to put that in place. At the elementary level, again, we will rely on teacher discretion because you will know your students in your class and whether or not they may require more frequent mask breaks based on their developmental age. Again, keeping that under 10 minutes a period of time. There are children who may require extended mask breaks, and in that case, those students may need to leave the room in order to do that. The next question, who will dictate when and how there will be mask breaks? I think I pretty much answered that question. The child may require more frequent mask breaks, and the teacher also will have a discretion of looking at what is needed based on the developmental age of the students in their classroom. Are we required to allow students with medical reasons to eat in our classroom? At the secondary level, students who do not have lunch, the secondary principals are working on an alternative so that students are not eating lunch within their classrooms. We are not making that recommendation. Again, shields, desk shields at the secondary level are not required at this point in time, and therefore we will not be having students eating lunch in their classrooms or snack. At the elementary level, as we all know, students do have a snack time, and we do have the desks in place. Again, they would need to remove their masks in order to have their snack at their desk. And I believe snack time can be for a designated period of under 10 minutes. There would be no reason to extend that period of time in keeping with those guidelines. Are teachers allowed to take their mask down to instruct if they are more than 6 feet away from students? I would say that we probably, at least at the initial point of the year, I would leave your mask on. Even if you have a face shield, I think it is a prudent way to proceed is just for your safety and the safety of the children in your classroom is to leave your mask on. Even if you are more than 6 feet away from your students. Again, I would say if a teacher, just like a student, requires a mask break, I think that would be appropriate for the teacher to be able to take that break if they needed it within a 10-minute period of time. Can teachers be closer than 6 feet to students if both the teacher and student are wearing a mask? Yes, that is possible. Again, we put in these redundant measures because we believe that it is for the safety. But if you have to approach a student and get closer, and as a teacher you feel comfortable doing that, you may. We also can provide you with an additional face shield. That would be another redundant measure to assist in getting closer to students. We're also doing sliding shields for our speech pathologists who may work very, very closely, or our BCBA or special education teachers in those classrooms. Students aren't wearing masks for lunch or recess, so where do they put them so they don't get on ground or lost, as they still have to walk through hallways from lunch to recess and back to class? We are purchasing breakaway lanyards where the masks could be held on those, so we will have those in time for school to start. And we are recommending that the students put their masks on the breakaway lanyards, so that if they are running and it falls off, that's fine. Also, the monitors on the playground and in the cafeteria will have extra masks for students should theirs become soiled or lost.
How will the students who opt for remote learning learning receive special area instruction at the elementary level? Will special area teachers be required to teach both in person and online for remote students, or will there be a designated remote teacher for specials as well? At this juncture, we have several special area teachers who will be teaching remotely and with the remote students due to their own personal circumstances. Based upon the numbers that we're receiving, and we're going over this today, we have about 15% of the population that didn't respond, that the principals and their staff have been communicating with since early this morning. We'll make a determination whether or not we'll need additional staff beyond those that were already went to the remote piece.
If we have to shift to a fully remote setting, what flexibility will there be to accommodate teachers who may have to attend to their young children during live instruction? So in the event that we are all on remote instruction, if you've looked at the schedules, and I'll start with the elementary, there is a portion of time in the afternoon that teachers would be able to spend with their own children at home, because the portion of their classroom experience working with the students in a synchronous manner would be in the morning. And for our special area teachers, it would be the reverse. So there would be time to address the needs of their own children. At the secondary level, our teachers teach for a period of 5 periods a day. Obviously, there would not be any whole duty, or there would be prep, but you can take your prep at any point during the day. So there would be time to address the needs of your own children. We are sensitive to that and do understand those circumstances. If we end up going remote, will the district look into childcare options for staff? So last March, as you may recall, the governor ordered that every school district provide childcare for essential workers. And those essential workers would have included anybody who, healthcare workers, it was truck drivers, it would be educators as well, who were required to report to work. I would think that every school district would be making those accommodations as needed. So if a staff member works in a neighboring district, I would assume that those school districts would make the necessary accommodations for those who would need to teach remotely. Again, some parents may be very uncomfortable with sending their children to a child care facility and may want to keep their children at home, which is pretty much what happened during the course of the school year. However, it would really be dependent on the executive orders of the governor. But again, as a school district, we have always worked collaboratively to support our staff and would continue to do so that they can be able to fulfill the responsibilities of their job.
For courses without online text, can school textbooks be distributed after being wiped out to each student during the first week of school? The answer to that is yes, but teachers should reconsider their procedures with having those books going back and forth from the home to the school.
If a student who is supposed to be in class student is at home sick, will they have the ability to watch the lesson online? So I'm going to bifurcate this question and answer it from an elementary standpoint. Because in the elementary school we are not really proceeding in that manner, that would not be the case. If the student were out for an extended, prolonged period of time, they would likely go on home tutoring as an option, because there would be a different teacher assigned to them in a remote model. The parent, if the child was going to be out for a very protracted period of time, we may switch that child over to the remote teacher at the elementary level. At the secondary level, it's a little easier to answer, and the answer would be yes, of course. If the child were up to logging on remotely, they could certainly do that.
Will there be more places for students to charge their Chromebooks throughout the building? Many classrooms have little to no electrical outlets that can be used. Also, can we make sure that there are electrical outlets near teacher desks in the room? We are going to have to plug in as well. So two parts to this question here. I'll address the teacher component first. Due to the need to maximize space for social distancing, much of the furniture was removed from each of the classrooms, and each teacher has been left with either a teacher desk or a computer table where the desktop and the printer will be. That table is therefore needed to be placed closest to the drop that is in the room, and so it will be immediately next to the outlet for the staff member. As far as students go, we have removed any extra desktops that exist inside of classrooms, as the students are not going to be using that shared material. Instead, they're going to be using their Chromebook. Teachers have 2 chargers available to them. They have one for their Chromebook. They have one for the loaner Chromebook that is inside of their room. You can absolutely encourage students to bring their chargers if they need them. And we are placing power strips in strategic areas throughout the building so that students can charge their devices. A Chromebook should last for about 10 hours. It is my strong recommendation that you do not let the battery on your Chromebook go less than 20%. The Chromebook does not like that. So I do recommend plugging in over not plugging in, especially overnight. The second question kind of dovetails nicely into this. What happens if a student does not come to class with their Chromebook, or they forgot their charger, or have some other difficulty? Will they have access to loaners in the library? A lovely high school teacher reached out to me and asked me if it was possible that she could enforce the practice that students are required to bring their Chromebooks to class. And the answer is yes. Not only is that an expectation for students, I would hope that it would be built into the grading policy. Bringing the Chromebook and bringing the Chromebook charged are part of participation. That being said, things happen. We have purchased UV carts for all of our libraries, which is where the loaners are going to be stored. The reason that they are going to be housed in the UV carts is because that is a shared supply, and we must clean shared supplies between individuals. So the students will be getting a disinfected device from that cart while we do any troubleshooting or provide any technical support that's needed.
The next few questions I will address. When considering how many people are in a room, are SEAs and TAs being taken into consideration as additional bodies in that room? Yes, they are. Again, because class size will be lower, there will likely be less SEAs and TAs in the room. Again, we do need to be conscious of the fact that there are IEP regulations that we must follow explicitly and with fidelity for those students who do require a one-to-one TA or SEA to be with them. So we will, but we are looking at that, and when I say looking at that, it is being taken into consideration in the planning of our class sizes. Cheryl stated in an original forum held with administration and teachers that class sizes at the high school would be 18. This was to ensure social distancing at the secondary level. I want clarification on this number. Is this a cap of 18 for each and every class period at the high school, or is it an average within a department? So I appreciate the opportunity to provide clarification on this. Over the weekend, I was speaking with Bill Bernhard, and at the high school, in measuring out the classrooms, he is able to get, in the average size class, 19 students in the classroom. The junior high schools appear still to be at 18. However, we are using larger spaces within our buildings to include our music rooms, our LGI at Ward Melville High School, in which we can definitely, and the auditorium, have more students than we would in an average size classroom. So the typical classroom will have 19 at the high school, 18 at the junior high school, but however, class sizes may be larger in those venues in which we can support more students spaced 6 feet apart. The next question is similar. Does the cap of 18 include remote students? No, it does not. It does not include remote students, since those are not in your classroom. the numbers of students remotely could be an average size class as if we were last year. So if you had 28 students or 26 or 27 students, those numbers would be similar to what they were last year. Will this school be open after school? Since students usually hang out in a commons or a library, how will this be monitored social distance wise? We are allowing our co-curricular clubs to occur after school. And for those students who are remote can participate remotely. However, there will be no outside groups allowed until January, at which time we will reassess this decision. So after the co-curricular clubs are gone, the students should be out of the building because that will provide opportunity for our custodial staff to clean those buildings. Right now, we are still waiting to hear about athletics. We are supposed to have a decision, actually it was supposed to be today. So I don't know if that's forthcoming, but if it doesn't happen today, it will happen within the week. And that would be the only other group of individuals who would be in our schools after school. Will this, where will students go if they have a free period? Well, this pertains to the secondary level. So in the junior high school, they'll be in study halls if they have a free period. And at the high school, Bill is looking at alternate arrangements for those students to be in either the cafeteria, the commons area, outside area that is being set up for them, or study halls. So that the students will not be wandering around in the hallways.
As per Alan Baum in Teacher Forum number 1, there are no remote sections. Please explain in detail. For example, Teacher A is teaching English 10 at the high school. He has children in person and remote students on the roster. How are they seeing instruction, teacher-made materials, smartboard, hand gestures, etc. while home? What are they seeing exactly? Is the teacher just sharing his screen? What about all of the other things that help instruction? What the teacher sees while the teacher is at home is entirely up to the teacher. If you have manipulatives or other teacher-made materials inside of your classroom that you are unsure how to translate to a remote environment, please reach out to me or the instructional technology leads so that we can help you work through those ideas. I would like to thank all of the teachers who have been in communication with me recently. The Sam Cherubs, the Kristen Melnicks, the Eileen Diamantes, the Judy Brady's, the Mike Sackos, who have really given me the opportunity to get inside of their discipline so that we can troubleshoot how this is going to work. This is not a one and done situation. I don't want anyone to have the expectation that they're going to come to the 3 professional development days and all of a sudden be prepared to run a hybrid or remote classroom for the next 185 days of instruction. This is something that we are going to need to continuously touch base upon, and this continued conversation is so important to improving teacher practice, making sure that teachers feel supported while they are trying to navigate this new normal. Students can absolutely see what you choose to share on your screen, but they can also use a variety of tools that we've purchased that you may have seen in our instructional technology playbook, such as Nearpod, Pear Deck, Edpuzzle, Kami, etc. Our instructional technology leads are really looking forward to sharing their expertise in how you can take something like a hand gesture and translate it to a remote environment.
Special education aids are often utilized in different capacities around the building during the day. As stated in the state ed guidelines, movement around the building should be limited and students, when possible, have the same teacher during the day. Are there any plans in place so that SEAs are not being moved around the building during the day and that they remain in the classroom that they are assigned? This is definitely something that we're looking at and we'll be able to nail down as we determine how many students will be on remote instruction and how many will be in the classroom. And as Cheryl mentioned, there are IEP mandates or 504 mandates that we have to uphold. So we have students across the district, some who have an aide with them for as little as 45 minutes, others it could be all day. Sometimes it's in a group, sometimes it's an individual aid, and that goes for TAs as well. So we have to uphold the IEP mandates the best that we can, but it is definitely something that we will look at moving forward.
This question may sound a little redundant, but there's other parts to it. What materials are we allowed to use? Math manipulatives, dry erase boards and markers, games, bingo chips, dice. You're allowed to use any of those materials. It is recommended strongly that we provide individual materials to every student. This is particularly for the elementary level where this seems to be coming from. So we are buying baggies like they're going out of style, so we have enough of them to go around. We're on order because the bags will break at some point. Those children should keep those materials in their bags, their backpacks, which will be on the back of their desks. Will students be allowed to be pulled for small group services such as reading and math? If not, how do you anticipate students that are identified as needing support will receive these extra supports? Students are allowed to be pulled for group services. When or if the remote option is necessary, the school day is starting an hour later. How is this decided? Were all constituent groups consulted or involved in the discussion? Many teachers work second jobs after school. This will be impacted. What about picking up children up at school or daycare? The subcommittees that were created for the reopening task force included a wide variety of constituent representatives, from members of the administration, the Board of Education, parents, teachers, community members. Every known group that was out there was part of the decision-making process. This was not made in isolation. So the question is rather presumptive that it was some type of arbitrary decision, but it was not. It was done in conjunction with everyone's input. As far as the piece of needing the second jobs, honestly, that didn't come up at any point in time. However, if we're all out, then everyone's going to be all out. All out is based upon regions, so it's Nassau and Suffolk County that will be all out. If we individually have to go out for our particular school district, it will probably be only a day or two or more in those particular cases. But if the entire region is all out, no one will have to worry about that component.
If no students in a specific section opt for remote learning, will we still need to live stream the class? I do not believe that if you have no students, I apologize, let me back up. If you do not have any students who are remote, you will not need to video conference. However, you may want to practice video conferencing so that you are prepared in the event of quarantine or closure. You may have students that need to go remote because they have to quarantine, and you may have to employ video conferencing in your practice if we close. So not something to, just something to ponder as you build your course for the year. Can you please explain exactly how students will be learning from home and in the classroom simultaneously? May you please clarify guidelines and expectations for both teaching live and remote students simultaneously in the classroom? Are there any student privacy issues / laws teachers need to be informed of? For this year only, we are looking at designing instruction that can take place not independent of location, whether that be in school or at home. I do not mean to imply that in-person education is not best. We all know that in-person education is best. And I hope that when we are past this point, we can take these tools and actually begin to use them in meaningful ways that we enjoy to employ with our kids. This is something that we are doing in order to survive a pandemic. The expectation is that whatever you are doing with your kids in school, you are also doing with your kids at home, which is why the Chromebook and these online programs that we have procured are going to be so incredibly important. As for the privacy piece, I'm going to defer that question to Cheryl.
So video conferencing in and of itself does not violate any privacy laws, because video conferencing or a video of a classroom is not considered a student record. It only becomes a student record when the student is the actual focus of that lesson. And so that would mean that the student would be making a full presentation, the whole lesson would just be on that particular student, and then could constitute an actual record. And even, again, that would be stretching it. If it is used as a disciplinary video to use in a, let's say superintendent's hearing or principal's hearing, then at that point it could become a student record, and that would be something that the school district would utilize. But other than that, for 99% of the time, the video conferencing would not be a student record or be considered a student record. And I just want to let teachers know that any kind of liability issues would be handled by the district and they would be indemnified. So they should not be concerned with that issue. If we remove items from our classroom for now to make more room, would we be able to get them back at a later date when social distancing is lifted? Yes, of course.
How can we expect to answer questions from students at home while we are simultaneously teaching students in person? This is a question that I've heard a lot. The answer might not feel very comfortable. We need to look at designing a communication mechanism that can be used by all students, no matter where they are. So whether that means saying to students, I'm giving my instruction right now, and when you have a question, you're going to write that question down inside of the Google form that I have shared with you. I will stop at predetermined points and I will answer those questions. Both your students in person and at home would utilize that mechanism. There's a really nice feature inside of Pear Deck. If you haven't checked out Pear Deck before, it is a Google Slides add-on. And there's a slide bar that allows you to agree or disagree. One of my favorite things to do is to use that slide bar at the end of every segment to simply ask, are you ready to move on? Agree or disagree. I suddenly have a whole class snapshot of where my kids are, and I know that I've touched on something that I need to revisit. We will support any communication mechanism that you choose to employ inside of your classroom. It may look a touch different this year, and it's going to be highly individualized based on what your instructional objective is, your teaching style, and your students. So please, again, I cannot say this enough. Reach out to me, reach out to Andy White, reach out to Janine Lombardo. I know that there was just a posting for 2 more instructional leads that we will be adding in order to build that capacity. Please reach out to us so that we can provide you the individualized help that you need.
What is the criteria for a school to close and everyone going to remote learning? As we know, our governor has stated that if the transmission rates in a particular region remain below 5% or below, school will remain in session. Right now, we are hovering around 0.7 for Suffolk County. If it goes beyond 9%, the governor said schools would close. Again, we would be working very closely with the Department of Health and our Chief Medical Officer in making any decisions about our school closure. If you recall last March, the school district did make a decision to go out before the Suffolk County legislator executive made that decision and the governor. At that point, we were extremely concerned with feedback that we had been receiving from the Department of Health. Again, we would be looking at all of those transmission rates and working very closely with the Department of Health to make those decisions. What is the class average at the high school in the current version of the master schedule? So I'm going to make the assumption that the current version was the version before we began to create the new version, which took into account the number of students in a remote learning plan. Those class sizes were according to contractual guidelines and follow those guidelines pretty specifically. For science, they are very different than they might be for, let's say, chemistry, living environment, physics. They follow whatever is in the contract. Also for family and consumer science and technology, those would also follow those guidelines. And at the elementary level, I would say that our class sizes were far below what the contractual and board guidelines were. So with regard to the high school, as I've stated before, we have lowered those class sizes to accommodate for the physical distancing. Many of the other questions are the same, so I'm going to go to Kevin.
Reading stories and modeling activities will be difficult for all students to see appropriately. Are there plans for these times? Yes, as we had mentioned, Deidre mentioned several times about what we're planning for our trainings for the professional development days. We'll be doing demonstrations using the two main platforms and others that are out there as well to demonstrate how you can go about doing those demonstrations.
I just want to add before I begin this next question that you say I'm sitting here with my my Chromebook. I have received 5 email inquiries from teachers so far about their practice. I really love that you're getting the message. Keep doing it. I would love to have these conversations with you about how you can be successful next year. So during the first FAQ session, we heard that students will have the option for remote learning and will be expected to log in during the time of our class each day, including electives. Does this mean that we will have cameras in the classroom? You do have access to the camera that is on your Chromebook, but there will not be a separate camera device in the classroom. There are a lot of pros and cons for having a camera in the classroom. I'm sure some people want them and others do not. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the issue just comes down to supply chain. There are worldwide is a shortage of webcams as everyone who is looking to work from home is purchasing them up at record pace. So not something that we could implement right now even if we wanted to. Will remote students be required to be on camera and in person at the appropriate time? I'm concerned about students logging on without the camera and not really being there. I think that's a really valid concern, and so I hope that you make use of some of the formative assessment tools that we have inside of our instructional technology playbook so that you know that your students are there and that they are participating. There are other ways to make students who are remote and at home accountable for their classwork. Think about your groupings. When you create your groupings, please group your remote students with students who are in school, so that way they are accountable to their classmates as well as to you. I also have lots of other creative ideas on how you can do this, but I'll stop talking for now. How will we give remote students our Google Classroom codes before the start of school? It's a much smaller population of students who are going to be entirely remote, but instead of giving them the Google Classroom code, you would go to the people page of Google Classroom and invite them. If you are a secondary teacher, you may be pleased to know that all of our secondary students in grades 7 through 12 are getting Gmail accounts this year. So if you find that a student has not accepted your invitation, you can email them. You can also follow up with any of the options that are available in Infinite Campus, sending a message to the parent, or even calling home if the student has not accepted that invite. How will attendance work in secondary? Will students be grouped by remote or in person on Infinite Campus? For secondary, as we've mentioned and kind of been going over, there are going to be no remote sections. I think I'm just repeating what Alan said. Instead, the classes will be a mix of students that are in person and students who are home. Your students who are in person may become students who are at home if they need to quarantine, and your entire class may become remote in the event that we are forced to close.
I'm concerned about the expectation for kindergarten students to be seated at a desk all day. It is unrealistic. Are they considering movement opportunities for them within the classroom during that day? Will kindergarten students be permitted to play with other students within the classroom? Are we permitted to use classroom supplies during these times? So we completely understand the expectations for our kindergarten children. It will be very difficult to keep them in a stationary position. So teachers, I would say, would have the option of bringing the children outside of the classroom. They could move them around the building, take walks around the building. That would be absolutely permissible. In terms of playing with one another, it would probably look more like parallel play because we do have to keep the children socially distanced from one another. And in terms of using classroom supplies, as Kevin has pointed out, we are going to look for the children to have their own manipulatives and own materials so that they aren't sharing those kinds of supplies. However, we also have ordered child-sized gloves. So in the event that children are sharing materials, they will be able to don those child-sized gloves and then dispose of them. But I think kindergarten teachers, I have great confidence that they will come up with creative ways to move those children in spaces outside of the building, again, outside of their classroom, I mean. And also outside of the building, especially if weather permits. Again, most of our elementary schools have a mini gym, and if it is available, I would encourage that teachers feel free to bring the children into those spaces.
Can students use the writing center in the classroom? Are students expected to only use Chromebook for writing? What about a writer's notebook or drafting paper? So as we pointed out several times about the composition of the classroom, we're trying to keep the students separated in different areas. You will really have no writing center in your room if you have an elementary classroom. So do they have to use the Chromebooks? I think that's a pedagogical question more than anything else, and you have to look at the levels. If the primary level, it may not be as advantageous than to use paper. But as much as possible, the exchange of the paper should be limited. So again, primary purpose within the first few weeks of school is to try to train every child from kindergarten all the way through 7th grade, because they're just getting their Chromebooks for the first time, on how to use those devices. Because eventually we will probably be out on a remote instruction plan. Which I think is the next question. Since it's not confirmed whether the virus lives on paper or not, is it safe to say that it is expected that bulletin boards are left bare? It will not be expected that you can leave them bare, but you could decorate them. I wouldn't suggest putting any student work up on bulletin boards, but I know especially elementary teachers like to decorate for different seasons and different events. Secondary teachers might do that at different times of the year. You're certainly welcome to do that, but I would not display any student work on those boards.
If I could just add on to Kevin's answer for my elementary friends, especially when you have parent events, QR codes, use QR codes to send and share student work. And if you don't know much about QR codes, please reach out to me, Andy, and Janine so we can help you.
Before I answer the next question, just to follow up on what Kevin said a little bit with student work, there is a question coming up regarding the use of the Virex and how it makes paper curl. It could also, if the fogger was used in a classroom on student work that was hanging up, it could cause the colors to run. So that's just another issue. Will we be provided with rolling barriers to make it safer to work with individual students who are in special programs such as speech, special ed, and literacy? Yes, there's a couple of different types in addition to the folding desktop barriers that we're getting. They have desktop barriers that are a little more rigid, that stand up on feet, that don't fold, they're just straight across. So we're getting a number of those for a lot of areas. And in areas where more of a almost like a portable on wheels barrier kind of thing is available as well. So we will get those for spaces where that would work well. Will hands-free Purell dispensers be placed in schools' classrooms? Not necessarily hands-free, if you mean the where you don't have to press the lever. We do have some of those. Some of you press the lever. I would say that when you press the lever anyway, then you're cleaning your hands. You're disinfecting your hands anyway. At the secondary level, for shared supplies in art and tech classes, students cannot, or for supplies that students cannot purchase on their own, for example, a hammer, who will be responsible for disinfecting these supplies in between classes? Honestly, I don't think there's any way we can disinfect every single thing between every class. However, the disinfectant, the spray bottle, will be in every classroom, and we would not say that it is a teacher's responsibility, just as we can't assign it to kids to do. However, if you as a teacher want to spray the stuff on those kind of things, you certainly can. And if students want to do it themselves, they can. And that's part of why we promote the hand hygiene and the other protective measures we have in place. Hopefully, all of them together do what we need them to do. No one thing is perfect, but all those things combined hopefully does the trick. At the secondary level, is it expected to have the desks, Mac computers, et cetera, wiped down in between classes? Whose responsibility will this be? The teachers or the students? Will we be supplied with cleaning supplies for this? I guess I just answered that. Again, disinfectant, it will be in every classroom, and anytime anyone needs more, just say something to the, either building custodial staff or the building administration. And we're asking the custodians also to keep an eye on that, especially when they clean their sections at night. If the spray bottles need refilling, just to refill it without you having to ask for it.
Will computers be removed from computer classrooms/labs at the high school to decrease germs? Yes, they have been removed, not only to decrease germs by limiting shared supplies, but also to open up more classroom spaces. Some of those computer labs are being reconverted back into classrooms so that we can make our sections smaller.
Will barriers be put in between computers in the art room, computer labs, or is there a plan to spread out the computers? The secondary schools will have the shields that they can carry around with them every day, so they can use those. Or if we can spread out the computers, that's good to do, not, I wouldn't say instead of, but in addition to using the barriers. The more we can do, the better. When will teachers be notified of physical space precautions in their individual classrooms so we can plan accordingly? I'm not sure exactly what that means, but if what it means is that if there's a particular classroom with for some reason, there are certain circumstances where it might be problematic for either spacing or whatever, the building administration will address that, and if there's something that we need to do, we will do that. I'm not sure exactly what that means. We have separate bins for paper. They are not lined. The garbage cans contain garbage. Food waste, liquids, used tissues, etc. Liners need to be replaced daily. We replacing most of the liners of the small trash cans that are in the classrooms don't need to be replaced daily, and it's not a matter of saving money on buying trash bags. It's a matter of the time it would take. I mean, I think it would be better suited for the custodians to be cleaning. However, if a liner needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced, absolutely.
Can we pass out papers, tests, worksheets? Can we collect projects? Can we post or display work in the classroom? Again, as often as possible, we're trying to limit the amount of paper exchange between teachers and students. It is highly recommended, since you have the Chromebooks, to use those devices to distribute and receive work. Obviously, this will have to be judged by elementary and secondary, much more at the primary level where there's more paperwork being distributed. As far as displays, we've covered that a couple of times already. We prefer that you try not to display student work.
Do we have students log on to their Chromebooks while the teacher sits at his or her desk and have a Google Meet with only those teachers? It is not required that a student who is in the room in front of you participate via Google Meet. I would recommend that the students who are at home are the students who are participating in Google Meet. However, if you push your students into Google Meet breakout rooms, you may have some students that are in school video conferencing with students who are at home, and they are working collaboratively together on a project.
What happens if students ask to eat in class? I think we went through this. Again, at the elementary level, there are designated snack times that are controlled by the teacher. At the secondary level, particularly at the high school where a student may have straight 9 periods, the building administration has made arrangements on a rotational basis for those students to be able to leave the classroom. If a student asks to eat in your classroom, as a teacher, I would suggest that they go to the cafeteria or to another part of the building where it has been designated by building administration. They can bring their Chromebook with them and follow the lesson at the secondary level, and then rejoin your class after they've had a chance to eat. Those should not be that many students. It should only pertain to those students who are having straight 9-period day.
Will desks be sanitized when students move from a room? We don't have enough custodial staff to sanitize every desk in every classroom between every period. As I mentioned before, the spray will be available in every classroom, and if the teacher would like to spray the desks, you can, or you can leave it available for students to do on their own. Jeff Carlson said Virex spray has been curling papers on admin desks. What about the effect of this spray on library books? Can we request that libraries don't get the bomb cleaning and surfaces like desk tables must be wiped down with Virex instead? In regards to Virex spraying, can materials charged student work be hung in classrooms? What I found in my own office is anything, a book or something like that, on my desk, there has been no issue. I was really referring to like a single sheet of paper, if it gets sprayed, sometimes it curls up when it dries. If this were to prove to be some issue at the library, then it's not exactly a bomb where it just goes into the room, and it goes off on its own and it hits every area. It's the custodian uses a fogger device that goes around, so we can avoid certain areas if necessary. That's not a problem. And then the second part of the question, materials charged student work be hung in classrooms. As I mentioned, especially with student work, it can cause some of the colors to run. If there are materials and charts, I mean, we can address that on a case-by-case basis. It depends on what the surface is and what the ink on it is. But it doesn't have to get sprayed. As I mentioned with the fogger, it's where it gets applied. It doesn't automatically, as I said, not the bomb that goes off and hits everything in the room.
Will there be desks facing the same direction in mental health offices, just like in classrooms? I'm a little confused by the question because there really aren't desks in a mental health office. Usually it's chairs or a table or a couch. And so the mental health professional and guidance counselor, psychologist, social worker generally is speaking to a student just as a teacher would speak to a student face to face. And there would be 6 feet of distance within that venue, and there would be wearing of masks.
What classroom materials are permitted? Classroom libraries, teacher-made materials, passing out papers, manipulatives, etc. Can students have open crates to hold supplies? Where are coats, lunch boxes, snacks, etc. going if we cannot use cubbies? What can the district provide so each child has all manipulatives in one place? The first question we answered several times. Crates, we're not permitting crates. Coats, lunch boxes and their snacks should all go in their backpacks or in their desk. Coat should go in the back of the desk. And as far as manipulatives, something to hold the manipulatives, we're not putting any further items in the classroom at this point. We're trying to limit as much as possible, again, for the cleaning purposes. We'll keep evaluating as we go forward. This is still, unfortunately, a work in progress with some of the issues going on. And we'll provide any further details as we move forward.
Is there a desk shortage? What is being done to get desks in classrooms that have not had desks before? If there is a shortage of regular desks and some classes will instead be using testing tables, where or how will students store their materials? Not so much a desk shortage, unless if you mean because we're not going to be using the tables as much, we had to order new desks. So yes, we have ordered new desks. It was about 800 of them. They're not in yet. I hope to have them that first week of school, but if not, we'll use the tables in the meantime. Until they come in. So we will have the new desks there. If hopefully by the first start of school, if not soon thereafter. We ordered them and we'll get them as soon as we can.
Clarify how a class will function if they're quarantined from the beginning through 14-day quarantine. As Kevin mentioned, our goal is to make students and teachers comfortable with remote learning in the event that we have to go out. If an entire class is quarantined, the entire class would go on remote instruction.
Purell dispensers in the classrooms are not contactless, or we're getting contactless ones. I addressed that before. We have some that are contactless, some not, but either way, after you touch it, you still disinfect your hands.
Will Class Dojo be available? The sad answer to this question is no, but it actually has nothing to do with the pandemic. At the same time that we are dealing with all of the new boundaries that COVID-19 has placed upon us, we are also subject to a new education law, Ed Law 2D. This education law requires us to take extra measures in order to protect students' personal information and their data privacy. Class Dojo will not agree to sign a privacy rider because they are compiling student information and selling it to third parties in order to market products to their parents. We are not the only district in this situation. I am part of a very large group of technology directors all across Long Island who are running into similar concerns with Class Dojo. So we are hopeful that, given that this law impacts all of New York State, that they will consider changing their platform. This one's also me. Will each class have their own cart for computers? I'm going to assume that this question is for elementary. So all of students in grades K through 6 are being given a one-to-one device. We have carts coming in, they are open air carts that all of the Chromebooks will be stored in. Additionally, the cart facilitates the charging. So yes, each class in grades K through 6 will be getting their own cart of devices.
Will paper towel rolls be placed in each classroom at the secondary level so that students and or teachers can wipe down their desks with the disinfectant spray? Yes.
Next section's on instruction and field trips. What will instruction look like? At our desks for hours will not allow for engaging and focused learning. We can be creative, going outside will need to happen. Can we use sit-upons to go outside? Instruction as we know it is going to change drastically. Having been in a doctoral program that's been online for 3 years, I can tell you, all the bad things that can happen with online learning, and even for adults who can't pay attention half the time, it's very difficult. So for children, it's going to be much more difficult. However, this is their world. They have been adapted to online learning, probably more so than most adults, even those sitting in this room. So they have been used to using things like Xbox and PlayStation and things like that with their friends at 2 o'clock in the morning, whereas many adults are still not used to that yet. So yes, we do expect creativity. Yes, we do expect engaging lessons. Yes, you can go outside. So those things are possible. You don't have to sit behind your desk the entire time. You wouldn't do that on a normal basis. You're not going to be expected to do that in this model line.
Will the district consider taking another look at the typing program in the younger grades, as technology skills are even more important now and the typing program hasn't worked? Probably hasn't worked since students are able to look at the keyboard while working with the program, so they can still hunt and peck. I'm sure that Kevin is going to insert a joke here about having scars on his knuckles from being beaten by nuns in Catholic school while trying to learn how to type. The answer to that question is yes, absolutely. We are always willing to pilot new programs that people are interested in. If you have a typing program that you would like us to take a look at, by all means let me know, but otherwise I can investigate that too.
Do you want to add? Okay. Will field trips be permitted? So if we're talking about actually putting students on a bus and bringing them to a different venue, the answer is for the remainder of this calendar year, no. We will not be engaged in any field trips. However, we can do field trips virtually, and teachers are certainly able to do that at their discretion. We just feel that the focus on instruction is so important. We want to keep the continuity of that instruction and the limited disruptions, not to mention the fact that bringing students to another venue where it may not be safe it wouldn't be the most prudent thing for us to do at this particular time. We will reevaluate that in the new year, in 2021.
Will science labs on the elementary level be pushed into classroom with the assistance of the science TAs? Yes, whenever possible, we're going to do that. The only thing that I would tell you is that any use of the microscopes may have to be evaluated, because the microscopes, especially the better ones, have to be recalibrated every time they're moved. So just like if you move a piano or something like that, they can tend to be very sensitive.
I'm gonna go to some of the questions that I've received, so we'll address those and then we'll go back to the list of questions that we had previously received. So some secondary teachers have been approved through HR to teach remotely. If no remote sections, what will these teachers be doing? In elementary, will there be remote teachers for each grade level? So the first part of the question is that any teacher who has been approved to teach remotely for any myriad of reasons will be fully engaged in the instruction of students. So I want to say that. Whether they will have a specific class assigned to them or whether they will be in a co-teaching model will be determined. However, every teacher who's been approved and is capable and able in a remote situation to teach will be teaching. The second part of that is in elementary, will there be remote teachers for each grade level? Yes. In fact, there probably will be multiple teachers for each grade level, given the numbers of students that have selected, or families I should say, have selected for their children a remote learning plan. At this point, the number for the district, again, we only have 85%, well I shouldn't say only, 85% of the parents have responded. We are making personal phone calls as we sit here, those calls are being made. So the current number is 15.6 of the population of the 85% have asked for a remote plan. We are anticipating that there'll be multiple sections of remote education at the elementary level. 3 days of technology training, can those sessions be recorded so teachers can watch if they forget, need a refresher, or feel overwhelmed with so much training at once? I'm going to turn to Deirdre to answer that question.
So I was just looking for my playbook because the other day I had the pleasure of having a meeting with the mentors to discuss continued support, particularly with regards to technology, that people are going to be looking for. So inside of the instructional technology playbook, we have placed a roadmap that we hope is going to span the breadth of the entire year of support that teachers can expect to be given. So the playbook, while it is a wonderful resource, is only the first line of defense. It is the first thing that a person can look at when they need a little bit of extra help or are hoping to teach themselves a new tool. Secondly, the district is bringing in those professional development days, Septembers 1, 2, and 3, where everyone will be receiving training on Google Classroom, GoGuardian, and Google Meet, and then teachers will have the ability to choose from a variety of the different tools that we offer that they can also go and take workshops in. That being said, a workshop, I will repeat this, is never a one and done. If you have gone to a very successful workshop, at the end of that workshop, you should take some of those things that you know back, build them into your practice, but inevitably they always lead to more questions. Good teachers always have more questions, so never be afraid to ask those. Faculty and department meetings are going to be taking on a professional development focus. We recognize that time is of the essence. It is a teacher's most precious resource. And so we're going to claw back that time, and your principals, department chairs, me, Andy, Janine, we will be coming in order to give you some professional development during that time, as well as collaborative time to allow you to co-plan. Professional development workshops and virtual conferences. Kevin leads the professional development committee, which is going to be meeting shortly in order to put out a catalog for the fall, which we know is going to have this technology focus. And finally, that ad hoc support that you can get by reaching out to me, to Andy, to Janine, and scheduling one-on-one time, small group time, meeting with us during one of the scheduled visits that the IT leads make. We hope that continuous support, reinforcement, troubleshooting is going to give us all the ability to add some of these things in with ease. After those 3 professional development days, please know that those are only a start meant to get you through the very first push of the school year. But we expect and we have planned for teachers to need more support beyond that.
Thank you, Deirdre. I would just like to also add that the district has posted 2 additional technology leads for this year to support our teaching staff and to provide the resources that they need throughout the year. The next question, when can remote students choose to return? Will their return throw off spacing if 19 students already are in class? Okay, so at the elementary level, students in a remote plan can choose to return. Their parents can choose to have them return at the start of the 2nd trimester or start of the 3rd trimester if there is room. So remember, we're keeping that 6 feet of separation. At the secondary level, we said the beginning of the 2nd semester, which is February 1. Again, we as students, and there are start of new courses, many of our courses at the secondary level are half-year courses. So we would take that into consideration and we would ask for them to give us that information ahead of time. Again, that is going to be dependent on whether there is room within the classroom for them to return. We do expect that there will be students who may go out remotely. We are allowing students to go out remotely at any time. So if a student is in a classroom setting and the parent opts to have them remote, they may leave the classroom. So the next set of questions have to do with student supplies. Are students allowed to use closets or cubbies? The answer is no, we are not allowing that because it's congregating students in a particular area. If not, where are their backpacks and clothes to be stored? We would say on the back of their chair at this point.
Will a school policy be announced to students making it clear that they must have their Chromebooks in school every day? Yes, absolutely.
How do we expect this again? Students to have all of their belongings at their desk without touching it all day long. What if things are constantly falling on the floor? Well, stopping children from touching things will be a miracle of miracles. So, yeah, I would just say that we have to remind children about hand hygiene. That would be something that we would be constantly reminding them, asking our teachers to reinforce that at different intervals throughout the day, and especially at the beginning of the year. There will also be signage everywhere. If something falls on the floor, the child should pick it up and go wash their hands. Again, there will be, if there is not a sink in the classroom, there are Purell sanitizers for children to use.
There's a statement at the beginning of this question. I'm concerned about the expectations of students given how last year ended with all students passing the 4th quarter, even if they did not complete any assignments. Can you make clear to parents and students from the start that expectations will be different this year and that they were last spring and that students will get the grade they actually earned? Honestly, yes, that's going to be the expectation not only from the administration but from every individual teacher too when you have your meetings with your students and hopefully some type of meeting with the parents as well, hopefully remotely. So we must make it clear that the expectations are very different moving forward this year comparatively to the spring.
In the next question, Kevin has already touched on this, but has the Board of Regents determined whether Regents exams will be administered in January 2021? The Board of Regents, State Education Department has put forth a document that indicates that Regents exams for January and June are on target. However, they also put in a preemptive statement that said that things could change. So at this point, we are including that in our calendar, but we would change based on the direction that is given from the state ed.
Will there be final exams and will they be the same for students learning remotely and the in-person students? So I wish I had a crystal ball to predict all the way out to June at this point in time, but I have no idea whether or not we're going to have them or not. So my hope is that we will. We could go out, we could be back in again. And the expectations for what that will look like will be discussed as we move forward from, with each department and how we should be doing the exams overall. Is there already a grading plan in place that should we unfortunately switch to a remote model similar to the one used for the fourth quarter of last year? We haven't decided at this point in time whether or not we would continue with that plan from last year. Based upon what we've worked on so far, it would have to be evaluated by the grading committee led by Cheryl. If we go remote, what will be the protocol to hold the students accountable for their assignments? So grading expectations should be in place and accountability expectations when assignments are due for every student at every level. So whether or not that is when you make it due, again, the personal circumstances of why it is late would have to be handled on a case-by-case basis. If we have students that are out sick or families that are sick, obviously as we have in the past, we'll try to make every accommodation possible. But I know this can get manipulated by people as we go along. A number of students and parents made contact regarding the different difficulties and amounts of, or sometimes lack of, work issued by teachers of different subjects during the last year. Will there be some sort of accountability requirements that all teachers must fulfill regards to assignments or entries in our campus grade books to help maintain some level of equity, not only with student work, but between teachers as well? Accountability has to go across the board. As we said, we will continue to work hard on this. We will expect that there will be assignments given on a regular basis, just as if they were students in person throughout the year. It shouldn't be that one assignment counts. We have policies in place that prevent any assignments from counting larger percentages than others, so we want to make sure we're following board policy and all grading procedures. How should teachers prepare their course outline? Should we add a grading policy and expectations if we go fully remote? At this point, I would be prepared for any possibility, so yes, that would be a great recommendation.
I'm going to answer one of the questions on masks, and then I'm going to go over to remote learning. If we have time, we'll go back to this because the whole purpose of this meeting was really to focus on instruction, so I want to do that. But I think this question is an important one. Will there be a list of students who are not required to wear a mask so teachers know in advance? The number of students not required to wear a mask should be minimal at best. And according to our CMO, Dr. Sussman, he will obviously be evaluating all of the doctor's notes that come in, but he said it would be in very rare circumstances that a student would not need to wear a mask. So teachers will be definitely provided with that information as to which students in their class are unable to wear a mask. Now I'm going to just turn it over to remote learning. And we'll start with Ken.
So the first question we already answered about units of study. Second one, for students, they receive instruction by logging on to class at home. What accountability is there to make sure students do this? Take attendance. They have to spend time live, online, and complete all their assignments by spending more time on their Chromebooks. When the district plan originally came out on July 31st, there was a doc included that showed full in-person, side-by-side, full remote. It had a schedule for remote. Where did that doc go? It's still there. Is it being revised? I want to see that doc. I went to see that doc last night. If that would give clarity to my question above, but I think it is gone. The document isn't gone. It's still there. It's under another tab. You just have to look for the scheduling icon for that. So the expectation is that we will be taking attendance. Yes, the students will have a variation of right now. If you're in person, and then we have remote operating at the same time. Students that are remote at the secondary level are following their schedule, so they're on at the same time. If we're fully remote, where everyone is out, that's where we move to the adjusted schedule, with the adjusted timelines. Will the district be understanding what supports will be in place for teachers with young children during a possible, maybe reading Cheryl's question.
Okay.
Possible lengthy remote instruction period. Teachers can give 100% to students when at the building because their own children are in school or daycare. With remote instruction, enroll a parent and teacher blend.
We recognize that our teachers are in a challenging position with the fact that school districts across Long Island and many of our teachers live or work in a different, well, I'm going to say that their children attend school in a different school district than our own. That may be having a hybrid model, which is unlike our own plans for full in-person or remote, which may make some of those things very, very challenging for them. Again, you know, as a district, we have always worked as collaboratively as we can with our staff to provide the support. Obviously, our expectation is that if teachers are here, that their focus is going to be on providing the instruction to their children. We have made modifications when possible for our staff in terms of their own schedules. I know particularly at the secondary level to come in second period or to be able to leave after a certain period at the secondary level. That flexibility is less likely at the elementary level. And we are looking at teachers who may be able to teach remotely for us at the elementary level and taking all of those things into consideration. Again, it's very difficult because we are not all on the same schedule. And unfortunately, that wasn't taken into consideration, I'm going to say at the governance level. Every school district was asked to create their own plan that was best for their community needs. And it is difficult because we have many people other than educators, police officers, firemen, nurses and doctors who have very different schedules that don't always allow those childcare needs. We do have our SAC program here, but again, that isn't going to compensate for a childcare program for those people who need something whose children are not in school every day, and we are sensitive to that. And we will do our best to work with you, but again, we do have expectations that if someone is employed here, that they will be in their classroom or be teaching remotely.
If we go back on remote learning, will we have a specific workday time period? It seems that in the spring, meetings would often be made outside our usual workday time period. I'm assuming you're referring to some of the department meetings and maybe building meetings at those times. So if you've heard me say multiple times over and over again with all these meetings, based upon the results of our survey and based on what we witnessed in the spring, there needs to be an end of the day, not only for the sake of the teachers, but also the students and the families. The day to continue on into the wee hours of the morning is ridiculous. It must stop at some point in time. It's not healthy for anyone. All of us, the families, the students, we need to make sure that we end the day. With regard to some of the meetings, unfortunately, with getting some of our information in 2-week spurts coming from the State Education Department, it necessitated having meetings on a more frequent basis. So I thank all those for your professionalism, for attending those meetings. We tried to limit them as much as possible. We will be going back on a regular schedule for the coming months. But as things come available, we will have a necessity on occasion to meet with you to keep you informed. So I apologize if you take offense to that, but if we act in a professional manner, we should be understanding that we need to have that information provided to us as best we can. If we go to remote learning, what was the basis for the only change to the schedule being to begin remote instruction at the high school 1 hour later? What resources has the district relied upon to arrive at this decision? Why does the district think that following a regular 9-period day is the best way to teach remotely? So again, the decision was made by committee. It wasn't made by any one individual or individuals in the process. We utilized the fact that we were cognizant of the time frames that people are under. You have to remember that while we're doing all this, we have families in the community who are trying to work remotely at home and trying to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get those families all prepared may be difficult. So that was part of the understanding of this. Going with a regular 9-period day was to keep our students in the same classes. Otherwise, if we cut something, we may have to cut further courses and limit the amount of courses that are available. So we try to maintain consistency across the board. What is the schedule of students who choose the remote option? I only see the remote schedule for a full school closure on the website. In fact, section talks about item A and item B, but I see one elementary remote plan under the schedule section. Am I not looking in the correct place? Whoever wrote this can give me a call. I'll be happy to show you where it is. I'm available anytime, day and night, weekends, you name it, I'm there. But it is there. the remote piece is available. And what will look like, again, if we are fully remote, there is a special schedule for secondary and for elementary. And we will follow that schedule through. The elementary in particular will have a different schedule based upon the fact that we're trying to limit the younger students to the amount of screen time they're having. Having anyone on a computer all day long is probably not the healthiest thing as well. Secondary students would have breaks between classes just as if they were passing classes. And they would have their lunch period and any other free periods built in. So again, those are both available on the website. Happy to review those with anyone who has difficulty finding them.
At the secondary level, can we hire permanent substitute teachers to provide remote learning? It would be, in my opinion, hard to manage the class sitting in front of me and a computer with remote learners sitting at home. Clearly, we recognize that challenge, but we have not yet discussed the option of secondary perm subs. We typically use our folks whenever somebody is out. We provide extra class coverage and things like that. We're going to need as many subs as humanly possible as we start this process, just without any idea about how many folks may be ill and not able to come in.
I am concerned about a teacher's ability to deliver the type of instruction that is being asked of us with the equipment that we currently have. During the spring, I had difficulty with my Chromebook when trying to share my screen, or when I had a few windows open with different documents I wanted the class to view, or wanting to go back and forth between a PowerPoint and a video. This question actually partners up nicely with another anecdotal experience that I received from a teacher who was switching back and forth between a Chromebook and a MacBook during a Google Meet and experiencing different levels of functionality. Chromebooks, MacBooks, PCs, desktops, they're all very different pieces of technology, and so they function in very different ways. So making a comparison between those two items might not necessarily be helpful right now. My office can give you the best information on how to work with the Chromebook in the way that is most efficient. I recently sent an email to all staff members regarding how to make sure that your Chromebook is operating at top speed. The Chromebook is a device that is connected to the internet and it runs off of the Chrome browser. It does not have a significant amount of memory. Therefore, making sure that your cache is clear in your history, making sure that your downloads file is not filled with files that you are not using that are keeping the device running more slowly, making sure that you only have the exact number of tabs that you need for instruction open at a time. Those are all going to be important factors that affect the speed and functionality of the Chromebook. If you are having a concern with your Chromebook, please reach out to our department as we are often able to troubleshoot the specifics of what's going on. Generally, it is not something that's widespread. It is a one-off, unique situation that we will help you troubleshoot. We don't expect you to have the knowledge or expertise to troubleshoot that, but I do hope that everyone knows that we are operating in good faith in order to provide the best technology to all of our staff members.
Why is the district diverting resources to consider a plan for a remote option at this later stage? The district has an obligation by executive order of the governor to provide a remote option plan. And we do have students who have medical concerns, as well as their families, as well as parents who feel very strongly about their students not being in school. It's a district obligation to provide for those resources. And we don't feel that we are doing something of a nature that is inappropriate at this time. The next question is, will special education students be full-time even if we adopt a hybrid or remote option? When we say special education students, I believe that we may be talking about students in a 611, 811, 1211, and 1511 class. We offered whether we were going to be in a hybrid model, which at this point doesn't seem likely, or a remote model, well, I'm going to say a hybrid model. that those students would have been in school on a continual basis for continuity of instruction. We know that some and many of our special needs children with significant cognitive impairment require more continuity of face-to-face instruction. However, if we were to have gone to a hybrid model and that parent wanted their child in that plan, we would have accommodated that student. But we were looking, just as we were with our English as a second language learner students, to provide that continuity for them because we recognize that they need that they need to have that in-person instruction on a more continual basis. If live streaming, how do we call on students and preserve privacy? It has been recommended by legal counsel that it's probably better to use student first names when calling on a student as opposed to using first and last names. I don't even know if you want to add anything.
Absolutely. Additionally, just repeating a point that was used earlier, coming up with a communication mechanism that is going to work best for you in your practice and for your students at home, which my office is looking forward to helping you develop.
What will be the repercussions for a student that does not sign in for remote learning during their class period? Obviously, the student will be given an absence. Again, though, to remember that if there's certain extenuating circumstances for that, for instance, we've made it perfectly clear that the district is doing its part to add additional bandwidth. But parents need to make sure that they have the ability to support remote learning at home. So it really is dependent on what they have as far as their Wi-Fi system at home. So if we have students that have difficulty with that, we need to make clear that the accessibility needs to be there. But perhaps there could be a sickness in the household. We need to explore those before we make rash decisions. But right off the bat, though, it is still an absence.
Will there be designated remote teaching periods? Meaning, could a teacher just have a section that is remote that they teach for a designated period? Unlikely, but it could happen. That is really the answer. Unlikely, but it could happen. It could be a teacher at the secondary level who has all of the students for that period remote, and the teacher would then deliver the instruction in that manner.
This next area is for the hybrid plan. What is the hybrid plan for the secondary schools? So the hybrid plan for the secondary schools involves a two-group assignment, Group A and a Group B. In week 1 and 2, in week 1, Group A would be in for 3 days of instruction and 2 days remote, while Group B would be in remote for 3 days and in 2 days. The following week, Group B would be in for 3 days, and Group A would be home for 2 days, for 3 days. And then at the end of the week, it switches. So that's basically the plan. That is also on the district website. Alright, textbooks and manipulatives. Will we be given codes to the online textbooks that we can use this year if warranted? In my department, for example, we do not have online textbooks for many courses, even though I do use digital resources that I have found online. So parents and students still want a textbook. Your department is absolutely able to purchase some of the online textbooks for them as well. We've tried to budget as much as possible. If anything, in addition, some of our current textbooks have online capabilities for a small fee. Yes, I'm fully aware what parents want as far as books. Some do as well. I like books personally, but given the circumstances, we have to provide the resources the best we can. Doing it online is a much better platform. You're also welcome to use any online resources that support your particular curricular area. For classes without textbooks and accessible online, what is the plan for instructional materials? Once again, you can work with your department members and come up with purchases for online books if you want them. I know that Deidre and the tech department has worked to expand our ebook capabilities. And we have a number of resources like Discovery Techbook that is available that's completely online. What are the expectations of sending notices, workbooks, etc. back and forth to school? Will students have access to books in my class library or our book room? Can students use manipulatives? I believe we've answered this question a few times about trying to limit that as much as possible, and especially with the manipulatives being available for all students. Will students be on the Chromebooks all day, or will they be allowed to use other things such as text, workbooks, handouts, etc.? No, there's no expectation that they have to be on the Chromebook the entire day. You certainly can have them go off of the Chromebook for a period of time and reconvene the class during the 40-minute period of your secondary, or have students do independent work at different points. The elementary in particular, if we're remote, in the afternoons there's time for independent and asynchronous work. Will photocopies be allowed to be used? Yes, you can use them. Again, we strongly recommend limiting distribution of paper. How can we go about obtaining additional ebooks or RTI reading instruction that are different from classroom materials? I would ask all of the reading teachers, and particularly the elementary and the junior high school level, if you have books that you would like to obtain, please speak with your leads in the elementary, speak to your department chair people at the secondary, and then we will order those materials for you. Homework and extra help. Should we be assigning work on computers for homework? Yes, you should. So, am I collecting anything from them, like homework, correcting things, then returning? We do have a turnitin.com, other systems that you can, that teacher will explain with Google Classroom, that you can turn in materials that way as well.
I did receive an email about this just a moment ago from a teacher. We're now up to 16 inquiries, woohoo! And that teacher was inquiring about a paperless classroom. You may not know about this functionality, but we're happy to teach it to you. Inside of the Google Classroom app on your Chromebook, there is an option for you to open up student work and annotate right on top of it. Best story that I can think of is a teacher who was sitting on the sidelines watching her daughter play soccer, who opened up the Chromebook, folded it open, opened up the student work, and was annotating right on top of it and then returning it to kids. So able to watch her daughter score or not score a goal and grade student work at the same time.
Will we be able to determine how we offer extra help? Yes, you can determine when you offer extra help, but the extra help should be given both to students that are in person and remote.
I'm gonna let Deirdre answer the technology questions and then we'll bring the conclusion.
Can older elementary students take the Chromebooks home, 5th and 6th grade? This is something that we've been discussing a lot behind the scenes, and I don't know that we have an answer to it yet, but I'm more than open to continuing the conversation. Some items that we are considering. If students go home during quarantine, they will have to transport that Chromebook back and forth. If they go home for a closure, they will have to transport that back and forth. So I do believe that there's a lot of merit in building that habit inside of students and allowing them to be responsible enough to bring the device back and forth. We will work with elementary teachers and principals in order to determine when that is best and most appropriate based on a student's age, responsibility, etc. Did the district receive Chromebooks for every child? We currently have enough devices one-to-one for all students in grades K through 6 and 7 through 12. What is the battery life on the Chromebooks? Chromebook battery life is approximately 10 hours for a healthy, happy battery. How are the Chromebooks being stored and cleaned? I'm guessing that this is a question from an elementary teacher. So from the elementary, we purchased open air carts for the Chromebooks. Each Chromebook has been labeled with a child's name. We have already assigned the device to the student. So there should not be any sharing of devices. We would expect that in an elementary classroom, most elementary teachers number their students. So 1 through 18, for example. There are plenty more than that. I think there's 25 slots on the Chromebook carts. Each student is given a designated slot and a designated device. It is expected that they will not be touching one another's devices, and so therefore sitting overnight and being sprayed with the Virex or the Oxivir on the exterior is perfectly acceptable. In any loaner situation, we are again providing those UV carts for loaners. We have larger ones that are going to be in our secondary buildings that hold about 12 devices at a time, and each of our elementary TAs is being given a small one so that they can disinfect a one-off Chromebook as they need to service it or work with it. Will computers go home each day? If the student Chromebooks are in school at night, can homework still be online? This is another question that I'm just going to tie back to that first one about Chromebooks going back and forth. It is a conversation that's still happening and one in which I think that teachers need to weigh in on what the best instructional practice is going to be. So I look forward to hearing some of that feedback. Are Chromebooks able to connect with our whiteboard if we are using slides or a PowerPoint to show both remote students and in-the-class students at the same time? Yes, absolutely. This functionality used to be possible through an extension called Cast for Education, in which the Chrome browser on the desktop computer, which displays on the board, connects to the Chrome browser on the Chromebook. And you would actually throw that image from your Chromebook to the board. That's been discontinued, and now Google is using Google Meet as the functionality there. So opening up a Google Meet session where both your desktop computer and your Chromebook are inside of the same Google Meet. If we are giving online assessments, can we mandate that all students take the assessment on a locked Chromebook to limit cheating? Absolutely. Students should be taking assessments on their locked Chromebooks. And even further than that, I would recommend that a GoGuardian session be opened at the same time so that we are using as many tools as possible to ensure academic integrity. Can we please use Zoom? Some of us are more comfortable with this platform and it has some features like breakout rooms for small group discussion and conferencing available. It is password protected. Can the use of Zoom be considered? The password protection is not the only safety measure that we have to consider when we make use of a product like Zoom. The other item that we defer to is New York State Ed Law 2D. We do not have a relationship with Zoom at this moment that protects our students' personally identifiable information. So at this point, for our district, it would not be compliant and we would not use it. I hope that everyone gets a chance to read the email that I sent earlier today. Google has released a roadmap for new functionality in Meet and when that is coming out. So you can take a look at items that are scheduled to be enhanced in September, October, and before the end of the calendar year. If you are looking to use breakout rooms this year, however, we do have a workaround that we have been employing. It works pretty well. So if you are inside of the instructional technology playbook in the Google Meet section, please check out the resource that I have shared for you on breakout rooms. It is a template that you can work within and then use for the remainder of the year. Can the district provide teachers with a microphone to use in class? We do have a limited supply of microphones and are currently investigating purchasing more. I do not know how many we will be able to get our hands on, but this is definitely something that's up for consideration. One of the things that I like to do is plug in my earbuds and have one earbud plugged in so I can, and I'm talking into my microphone at the same time. I realize that I probably look really cheesy while I'm doing that, but it's a pretty effective way of making sure that everyone can hear me.
I'm going to bring conclusion to today's instructional forum. And I want to thank the panel of administrators and also our TVTA leadership for putting together this list of questions. We know that it was a voluminous list of questions and we did not get to all of them, but we hope we got to the most salient of your questions. As a staff, we are most responsive, and if you have individual questions that you would like to address to each of us, we are certainly open and would welcome your questions. You can call us or email us. I also want to state that many of the answers are on our FAQs, particularly those that relate to health and safety. That information is very detailed on our district website. I also feel that the professional development sessions that we will have on September 1, 2, and 3 will help address many of these issues for you. And we are also open that once school begins to doing another information forum as questions come up, that new questions that staff may have that we may help in answering and resolving issues. Again, this is a fluid process. I just want to say that we are open to reevaluating and making changes as needed. And I appreciate everybody's support and patience as we navigate these very challenging times. So thank you, and I wish everyone well. Enjoy the rest of the summer, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.